This isn't a new Skynet from the Terminator film suddenly coming. The robots are going to replace all the humans. This is actually, or what you're describing, where you've been involved, is looking for the opportunities to incrementally improve with a robot. So you don't, certainly to start with, you're not getting rid of any people. It's almost, it's humans plus.
Absolutely. I mean, the messaging we're giving, and I think it truly is what we're working towards, is really to augment our technicians, and not just augment, but potentially even go beyond what they can see, hear, smell. But I've worked offshore for about 2 years, and work with our technicians in the Gulf of Mexico pretty deeply. And they are some smart people. Some of the smartest people in the company are on our sites. And to ask these smart people to walk around the facility to get readings from a gauge, to just make sure there's not a sheen overboard, and to just look at the equipment, I think isn't fully utilizing them. If we can get a robot to do those simple tasks, we can actually harness the power and the experience that our technicians can actually provide. So it's robotics, the area we're headed towards, at least one of the areas, is really about, utilizing the best of our technicians. And so not distracting them with kind of checking the box and just go gathering data, but actually spend their time focused on the data itself, and really using their experience to understand, do we need to do something different?
And that to me is just a great example of where it's like the incremental gains, reducing the wasted, you're using your valuable resource for good stuff. And it's also, this is an area where actually things like AI can play a big part. You've talked to me previously about the example of reading a gauge, which for a human is a very simple thing to do. But as you've said, you have to then pay someone to walk out and just go take a look. But this is a well understood problem with masses of data that we can teach with using computer vision as well-known libraries. Actually, we can apply this pretty quickly to do it. So the AI isn't making any decisions. It's just teaching it to read a gauge. It's then being able to do a function that otherwise is quite difficult.
Yeah, and I think you're touching on, that incremental change, right? I mean, if we were to look at, if we focus on the vision, right? If we focus on the vision and say robots will replace everybody, they'll be able to read gauges, they'll be able to understand what all the equipment is, and be able to basically do what a human does. And we wait until that is capable, until we have robots that are capable of doing that. I think we're going to be waiting a while. And so it is incremental, right? So and it just gets back to the approach we're taking, which is an incremental approach. I mean, ultimately it will result in a transformational, disruptive way of doing things. But, the approach we're taking is, well, step one, get a robot out there to walk the same steps that an operator walks. Step two, get a robot fitted with the proper sensors to be able to capture all the data or the information that a technician would do. Step three, and real quick on step two is, at a minimum, get the data to an operator in a remote location to actually then read that picture of a gauge. Listen to that compressor motor. Step three would be actually applying the machine learning and applying some of the analytical tools to actually read the gauge, listen for, and be able to tell if there's changes, right, to the system. And so it's very much an incremental. There's obviously more and more steps, right? Is if an operator then says, that's an issue, here's what you need to do. Well, that's the next step to take, right? The next step is, how did you determine that that when you heard a weird sound, you then took a thermal reading on that motor casing to see if there were hot spots, right? That's what you did. That's why you did that. And then start coding that up. I mean, it's kind of that digital twin approach, which is an incremental approach. Start with just gathering the data, right? That's the basics. Then get the robot to turn that data into information and find anomalies. Then it's about getting that robot to actually be able to determine what to do next. And that turns into a recommendation, right? And then I think, you know, that last area about actually taking action on it, you know, that's kind of that long utopian vision, right? And robots can then go out, and when it finds corrosion, it can scrape the paint, or, you know, and clean the surface and repaint and turn valves and do everything. If we're focused on robots, especially if we're focused on one robot that can do all that, I think it's going to be a long time coming. I think it will be the Terminators aren't coming, right? The perfect robot. In fact, well, I'll leave it there.
The Terminators ended up looking like humans,
which is pretty limited,
that was the
right?
best design.
Yeah. Well, that's not very humble, but absolutely, right? I mean, when you think about, and that's it just gets back to that approach, is because I hear a lot that, well, you know, we need to focus on what humans can't do, right? And I get it. But if you can't replicate what humans do, then it's going to be very tough to get a robot out there to do what humans cannot do.
Mm.
And so, at least when I think about that, it's about replicating what the humans do, and then it's adding new sensors, new capabilities, right, to go beyond. It's putting, you know, a hyperspectral camera on there that can see so many bands of that spectrum that a human can't, and seeing things. But those type of things, I think, are the additive. You can't start there.
Yeah. And also, there's going to be an economic optimum for existing facilities, and it won't be to completely digitize everything and robotify the lot. I guess we're going to see a point where it makes sense to buy in capability from possibly robots, or, as you say, installing a camera, or maybe installing wireless sensors like MOTES or LoRa, this new long-range, low-power Wi-Fi and stuff. So instead of teaching a robot to read the gauge, you might just replace the gauge with a battery that lasts 5 years or something. But it will be, in each case, there'll be a sensible decision, and economics will probably just drive that quite simply. So there'll be a suite of options, and different assets will pick what suits them.